Hi, my name is David Gouverneur, professor at the Department of Landscape Architecture at the University of Pennsylvania. Today, I would like to share with you a story on the future of the informal city, which will be the dominant form of urbanization in most developing countries. The 21st century will certainly be one of cities, and the fastest growing cities will be those of the developing world. By 2020, it is estimated that 1/3 of the total urban population will live in informal settlements. What are then informal settlements? They are essentially self-constructed areas that may start as a small group occupies lots to erect their homes and neighborhoods. And in time, these small settlements grow into large cities of millions of inhabitants, becoming some of the largest concentrations that have ever existed. This is certainly not a new phenomenon. Throughout history, migratory trends have resulted in accelerated, piecemeal, and organic urban growth. Most of the cities that we admire today began with informal occupation. We're just dealing with a different scale and velocity. The magnitude of the contemporary informal growth will have major socioeconomic and environmental implications. Whether attracted by the opportunities of the cities or pushed out by the harsh living conditions in rural areas, informal settlements will continue to grow. Informal settlements are the consequence of the inability of governments to provide land, shelter, infrastructure, and services for the urban poor. Thus, the less affluent are excluded from the formal or conventional mode of city making, simply because they cannot access the real estate market. In consequence, the urban poor are forced to squat on unserviced land, frequently on high-risk sites, steep and unstable land, and also on floodplains. However, informal settlements evolve quickly and faster than any planned cities. Residents gradually improve their dwellings from precarious shacks. They consolidate, they incorporate small shops, they rent rooms, they add extra floors to accommodate extended families. Homes become real living machines. In time, infrastructure and services are introduced in the settlements, and they may achieve the urban quality of areas that have departed from a formal process of urbanization. However, with limited accessibility, deprived of potable water, lacking sanitation and services such as education and health, these areas tend to remain in a submissive condition in relation to the formal city. How can we better deal with informal settlements? Well, in some countries, informal settlements are being demolished by force, evicted, just to see them re-emerge in other locations. Informal settlements are here to stay and to evolve. The public sector, institutions, and communal organizations should focus their work on aspects that the individuals cannot address on their own, which include infrastructure, mobility and accessibility, services, open spaces, income-generating opportunities, food sufficiencies, not to mention environmental challenges and the reduction of fossil fuel dependence. There have been important initiatives dealing with the improvement of informal settlements in the last decades. Particularly in Latin America, cutting-edge efforts have radically improved living conditions of informal settlements. To illustrate these success stories, let us have a look at the Colombian city of Medellin. In the past years, Medellin has experienced some of the most outstanding urban transformations of any contemporary city when it comes to elevating the quality of life of informal areas and integrating them spatially and functionally with the rest of the city. By doing so, both components have gained. The lack of accessibility made it difficult for the residents to commute to work and for the city to provide services, including access of ambulances and police surveillance. Seclusion facilitated the reign of drug lords, and crime was rampant. Quick accessibility in Medellin was achieved by introducing gondolas as means of public transportation, here called metro cables. Open spaces were carved out of the tight urban fabric adjacent to the stations of the metro cables, accompanied by amphitheaters, manufacturing incubators, world-class public libraries, and educational facilities. Homes on high-risk areas, as those in the floodplains of the ravines, were relocated Sewers were introduced to collect wastewaters before they spilled into the ravines, and pedestrian promenades were introduced along the torrents. Cultural activities were promoted to ensure constant use of the new open spaces. In order to make all these changes possible, a small percentage of the population had to be relocated within the same districts in what was called substitution housing, which would allow them to maintain their social ties. As a result of the physical interventions and managerial support, crime rates fell drastically and informal commercial activities emerged, particularly in the areas in proximity to the metro cable stations and the new public spaces. And residents expanded their dwellings and improved the appearance of their homes. In a few years, literally, war zones were transformed into neighborhoods of opportunity and peace. Political commitment to the improvement of these areas with qualified technical support and community engagement made these transformations possible. Other actions were taken to further connect the formal areas to the informal settlements, with public spaces and services of an urban and metropolitan nature, such as parks, pedestrian malls, science and technology centers, and plazas, that users of the different income areas would come to use and thus interact. The Medellin success story has called world attention and is being emulated, adapting the general criteria and design approaches to the nuances of different contexts and cultures. While this experience has demonstrated that improvement of existing settlements is possible and that actions focused on the public realm have a multiplying effect on the transformation of the communities, it also reveals that intervening existing areas can be a very complex task. This may suggest that there are other ways to deal with the growth of the predominantly informal city, doing so in a preemptive manner, planning ahead before occupation occurs, and fostering the transformation of the settlements as they become integral parts of broader urban scenarios seems to be a valid method. This is the topic of my current area of research and my upcoming book, Informal Armatures: Fostering the Growth of the Self-Constructed City. The approach suggests that public involvement is necessary to assemble land to gear occupation to appropriate sites and to protect those that should be kept free due to their environmental assets or where urbanization is risky. By planning and designing in a preemptive manner, institutional efforts and resources will have greater impact in the number of people served and may allow to do so in less time and with less struggle. The public sector should assemble the land and envision the spatial requirements of the public realm, defining the areas where the communities will self-construct their neighborhoods. It also suggests how to visualize the spatial requirements for uses that will help the settlements achieve higher socioeconomic and environmental conditions, and also find ways to keep this land free from unwanted occupation. In September of 2013, students and faculty of the School of Design at the University of Pennsylvania put into practice a mock-up of a fostered informal settlement here on campus. In only 72 hours and at a minimum cost, participants were able to establish the urban organization, insinuating streets, public spaces, defining the lots for the construction of the dwellings and for community services, and also for communal agriculture and recreational and sport areas. This experience demonstrated that with proper assistance and establishing a strong bond between the facilitators and the community, the settlement may quickly evolve. For the large cities of the developing world, the task ahead may be dealing with informality, merging its internal forces with contributions of creative planning, design, and management. In other words, how can we provide the urban framework that will help the predominantly informal city become sustainable urban scenarios and better places to live? Next time, please join Professor Gary Hack in a very interesting topic, land tenure and stability. Thanks for joining us.